Hello, boys and girls. Thank you for joining me today. Today's book reading is going to be a familiar character. It's Curious George Visits the Library. Let's check out George's adventure, or I shouldn't say adventure, but his great time at the library. All right. This is George right here. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. He wants to know a lot of things. Today, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were at the library. And I think they picked a pretty good day because on the board here it says story hour today at 11 a.m. I think they picked a great time to go to the public library. George had never been to the library before. He had never seen so many books before either. Everywhere he looked, people were reading. Some people read quietly to themselves, because that's what you do at the library. We're quiet. And here's the children's room. What's going on there? But in the children's room, the librarian was reading out loud. Great. Remember? Story hour at 11 o'clock today. It was story hour. George loved stories. He sat down with a group of children to listen. The librarian was reading a book about a bunny. George liked bunnies. Now, children, before we go on though, I want you to pay attention to this picture really quickly. Now, is George the only monkey in this group of children? Now, here's George, the little monkey. What about the other children? Are they also little monkeys? No, they're not. Now, let's come back to this because I think this is a great point to touch on later. All right, let's keep moving. Behind the librarian was a book about a dinosaur. George liked dinosaurs even more. He hoped she would read it next. But next, the librarian read a book about a train. George tried to sit quietly and wait for the dinosaur book to be read. But sometimes it is hard for a little monkey to be patient. Girls and boys, do we get that way sometimes? We do. It's not always easy to sit still, right? So then, when the librarian started a story about jungle animals, George could not wait any longer. He had to see the dinosaur book. He tiptoed closer. "Look, a monkey!" shouted a girl. The librarian put her finger to her lips. "We must be quiet so everyone can hear," she said nicely. "But there's a monkey," said a boy. The librarian nodded and smiled. She agreed. Now pause, boys and girls. I think the librarian just said something that is very important to capture. We must be quiet so everyone can hear. Now, do our teachers sometimes say that, to us at school? Yeah, we need to be quiet, boys and girls and boys. The reason is because if everyone is talking out loud, can we really hear or listen to the teacher? No, not really. And the same thing is happening here with the librarian. She is trying to read a book so every single child can listen, but if the children keep talking, then they would not be able to hear the librarian. So important. All right. When she finished reading the jungle story, the librarian reached for the dinosaur book. Where did it go? And where was George? They don't know. Where is George going? Well, he snuck out of these children's room. Well, turns out this is what George is up to. George was all ready to take the dinosaur book home and read it. And read it with his friend when another book caught his eye. There are just so many wonderful books to read. Reading is fun. This book was about trucks. George wanted to take it home too. And here was a book about elephants. George loved elephants. He added it to his pile. So now George is in Wonderland. He is finding so many things that he is interested in. George found so many good books, he soon had more than he could carry, so he leaned against a shelf to rest. Squeak! Went the shelf. Shh, said a man. Again, we need to be quiet in the library. Squeak! Went the shelf again, and it moved. Why? It wasn't really a shelf after all. George had found a special cart for carrying books. Ooh, lucky him. So what is he going to do with it? Well, here's what. What luck! Now George could carry all the books he wanted. He rode the cart between the shelves and stacked up books about boats and kites and baking cakes. He climbed higher to reach books about cranes and planes. Ooh, so now he is just picking everything that he wants to read about. So then what happened? At last, George had all the books he could handle. He couldn't wait to head home and start reading. And right in front of him was a ramp leading to the door. George was curious. Could he row the cart all the way home? Well, down the ramp George went. The cart rode faster and faster. Stop! A library volunteer shouted. Come back here with my cart. Uh-oh, turns out the cart belonged to someone else. But George was so excited to listen. The cart was picking up speed and George was having fun. Doesn't seem super safe, but I guess George was having fun. Until crash! George and the cart ran smack into a shelf of encyclopedias. Books flew up in the air, and so did George. He landed in a big pile right between O and P. Just like that. Now, let's talk about the word encyclopedias really quickly. So, boys and girls, encyclopedias are a series of big, thick books. They contain a lot of information. They can teach us a lot about many different things. So that's what encyclopedias are. Alright, what's next? Oh no! Moaned the volunteer when he saw the mess George had made. How am I going to put away all of these books? I would like to borrow this one, said a boy from Story Hour. And I'll take this one, said a girl. With help from George and the children, the books were sorted in no time. Soon, there was just a small pile of George's favorites left. Would you like to take those books home with you? The volunteer asked George. Then he took George to a special desk and helped him get his very own library card. That's what George did not know before. If you want to check some books out from the library, you need to borrow them properly with a library card. He thought he could just leave the library with them, but he didn't know. And that's okay. Now he does. George was holding his brand new card when his friend arrived with a stack of books of his own. There you are, George, he said. I see you are all ready to check out. George and his friend gave their books to the librarian. She smiled when she saw George's pile. I was wondering where this dinosaur book went, she said. It's one of my favorites too. The librarian stamped the books and handed them back to George. With his books under one arm, George waved goodbye to the volunteer, the librarian, and the children from Story Hour. Come see us again, George, the librarian said, waving back. Enjoy your books. Everyone is so nice. And George did. With his dinosaurs book. The end. Alright, so Girls and boys, before we wrapped up for the day, I want to just quickly recap 3 different things that really caught my attention that I think is so important. They're so important from this book. First, reading is fun, and reading is not just fun, but it also teaches you so many things, and it can make you much smarter, and that's what George loved to do. But I also thought, remember this picture that I drew your attention to before? Let me show you. All right. Remember this picture. Now, I asked you earlier, if you notice, the little monkey, the curious monkey is here, but what about the other ones? He was the only monkey. Everyone else is a boy or a girl. Now, my question is, throughout the story, how was George treated? Now, he might be different because he's a monkey. He's not a boy, he's not a girl, he's a monkey, but everyone was so nice to him. I think that's very special. No one treated him any differently because he looked different or act differently. Everyone was so nice to George, and I think we should do the same too. Even when someone is different than us, we should still love and care about them and treat them respectfully. But that is not all. I want to go back to this other picture and show you what happened. Remember this one scene? George did not mean it. He was just having fun, and he didn't know that rolling on the cart so quickly down the ramp would cause a great crash. Now, needless to say, it was a pretty accident. It was a pretty big accident because even the library volunteer said, "Oh no, what am I going to do, or how am I going to put away all these books?" It was a big mess. So, even though George made a big mess, and it was a pretty big mess, was anyone mean to George for the mistake that he made? Everyone was still really nice to George. In fact, they all got together to do what? To help George out to clean up all the books. So that is one thing that I also want you to take with you, is sometimes when our friends make mistakes, maybe they even make a mess, should we be mean to them? Just like in the book, I think we should show a lot of grace and a lot of help for our friends who sometimes make mistakes and make messes even. So, I hope you like today's book, and I hope you like the message. And tomorrow, I'll see you back here. Bye, Wildcats.